Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 115, Return to Fun. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. Welcome back to the Stories Told podcast. I'm author E.W. Barnes, and with me is author Michael Grayford. And today we're talking about the stories told in season 2 of series 15 of Doctor Who. So this is the second season of the Ncuti Gatwa Doctor Who. And there were 8 episodes, and we're going to talk about all the episodes, sort of just highlighting the episodes that we enjoyed, what we enjoyed about them, things that we might have changed as writers in other episodes, and just sort of have a conversation about that. But in the meantime, how are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And what's new in your writing world?
Writing world, I was focusing more on like learning and business stuff this past week.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. That's part of the deal.
Yeah, going through Amazon ads course, learning more about TikTok, which I've only kind of casually used. I set up my business TikTok account, a TikTok shop.
Congratulations. Cool.
Yes, I set up the shop. I haven't actually activated it yet with the books. I just want to make sure everything goes through right, and I set up stuff, and I do have books to ship out, but like I've got all the materials for shipping and stuff, because apparently you have to, as soon as someone buys, you have to like be ready to go to ship it out.
Yeah.
I've got that stuff getting set up with that.
And can you, like, for example, I know that you have your ebooks in Kindle Unlimited, which means that you can't sell them anyplace else. But if you chose to take them out of Kindle Unlimited, could you sell them in your TikTok shop?
I don't think so. I think it's just for physical products from what I've seen.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think they do ebooks, at least not currently. I might be wrong, but I seem to remember seeing people saying that you can't do that. And I don't see any way to do that in the shop, in like the business side of it, setting up the shop. I think it's just for physical things.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So I did that, updated a few things on my website. The non-writing stuff this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hear you.
Got to do it.
That actually had a very similar week, because while I have gotten a few thousand words in, I'm very pleased about that.
Excellent.
I am working on another business responsibility that comes when you're an owner of your own business, and that is reconciling a couple of months of financials. Because when anyone who runs a small business knows the United States government likes to get paid quarterly. In estimated taxes, we don't get to wait until the end of the year and then figure out, because people who work for someone else and get a paycheck from someone else, they get taxes taken out regularly. It's taken out every month. Whereas a small business doesn't do that. Instead, we're required to pay quarterly. So June 15th is coming, and I've got to figure out what we owe the government. And so that requires loading it up into an Excel spreadsheet that I've already got set up with all the calculations, so that I have an idea of what the amount is to send, and then sending it off.
Yeah, well, that's good. I haven't had to do that yet because I'm not positive yet. So I've got plenty of negative to go. So whatever I make this year will just be, against my losses in previous years.
And I think it's a good point. If anyone who's kind of curious about what it means to be an indie author, these are the things we all have to take care of. We are responsible for our own bookkeeping. We are responsible for our own accounting. We're responsible for our own marketing. We're responsible for our own inventory, what you're doing. You have to be tracking your inventory and how that inventory is going to get shipped, and all those things that a business does, we do. So plus producing the content that's actually being sold.
Yeah, until you get to, Brandon Sanderson level where you have an actual group of people dealing with a lot of this stuff.
But it's not even Brandon Sanderson level. We know authors. You and I have met authors who have grown enough where they have people supporting them.
For sure.
And they're not Brandon Sanderson level. So, you don't have to be the top of the top.
Oh yeah, you get to some point where you need at least one or two people to help you.
Exactly, which is kind of a nice thing. And, that's an aspirational goal, to get the business to a point where you actually need to consider, do I need to bring in somebody in to help? I am not there yet.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. We will. But in the meantime, let's talk about what we've been enjoying lately in books, movies, and television.
What have I been watching? Oh, Bosch. Have you seen that show? It's on
No.
Amazon Prime show. It's based off of a series of books by Michael Connelly. Sort of detective thriller kind of show. The stories. Each season is one of his books, from what I can tell. And it's a fairly standard detective show, I guess. Nothing super mind-blowing, but it's entertaining enough to watch. So I've been working my way through that. Is there anything else? Started reading the next book that we'll discuss, the Dirk Gently book.
Okay.
Pretty much it so far for this week.
I've got Dirk Gently. It's sitting on my table. I can see it. It's over there. I haven't started it yet. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's fairly shrinking. It's been fun to get back into the Douglas Adams mindset and just, his quirky way of writing.
Spoiler alert to our listeners. We're going to talk Dirk Gently, Douglas Adams in a couple weeks. I've been keeping it pretty limited to what I've been doing. Finishing up The Way of Kings, which is the first book in Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. I've read it before a couple of times. I really enjoy this book. And I have to say, we've talked Mistborn and we've talked
Skyward.
Yeah, is a good book, but I just love the Stormlight Archive. I love the detail. I love the world building. To me, this is very up there with Tolkien kind of work. The amount of detail that's in it and the interconnections.
Yeah, that's good. I haven't read. I'm a little wary of starting those just because they're so big.
and
it takes a lot for me to
and
write off on a large book.
They are hefty, but there's something unbelievably delicious about diving into a hefty book that you enjoy. I mean, it is just.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just great.
Nothing like that feeling.
Yeah. And then I've been continuing to watch The Librarians, that series from 2014 that I apparently missed in 2014. Didn't even know it existed. So that's been a lot of fun. Those are very light and just entertainment, sort of summer watching. Are you ready to talk Doctor Who?
Yeah, let's who it up.
All right. Today we're talking about the story told in the second season of the 15th series of Doctor Who. And we're going to be talking about all 8 episodes together, starting with the Robot Revolution and ending with the Reality War. And this is the season with the Doctor and Belinda. And I'm going to go ahead. I don't even know. Should I even bother doing a summary of Doctor Who? The Doctor is the Doctor. The Doctor's been around since 1963.
Yeah.
If you don't know what Doctor Who is about.
1963, that's when it started? Wow.
Yes. So, that's
pre-Star
Trek.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on, over 60 years. So very cool. All right. Well, why don't we just jump right in rather than doing a summary of it? Because if someone listening to this doesn't know what Doctor Who is, please go look it up on the internet and jump right in because it's very cool and very fun. It's great science fiction.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend starting with the series in 1960s though. Very, our storytelling has changed.
It has. It has indeed. And actually, you can't even find some of those because some of the original actual video recordings of those have been lost. So I don't even think you're able to see all of them. The 70s Doctor Who was a little odd, very quirky. And then when you get into the 2000s, Doctor Who was rebooted in the 2000s. And then that was more towards modern sensibilities and storytelling. And it really took off in the 2000s and became incredibly popular worldwide. So yes, if you've not seen Doctor Who and you're interested in learning about it, I think we're both agreed to start in the 2000s and then dig back and watch the other ones if you decide that this is for you.
Yeah, I would say so.
So let's talk about what we liked about this season. There were 8 episodes. I thought some of them were really outstanding. I thought some of them were less outstanding, but not terrible. I think honestly, all of these for me this season were all like 6, 7, 8s and above. I thought they were all pretty good. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree. I liked all these episodes. It's definitely some more than others. And one nice thing I will say about when Ncuti got was run, there were no Daleks and no Cybermen, which was a nice change.
Yeah.
I feel like they go back to those so much, and I mean, we get it. We don't need to see more of those every time there's a new Doctor. So it was kind of nice just seeing new stories for the most part. I really like that, and they're so creative with some of these things. It's, each of these episodes was so different, right? And they had a different idea, and that's one of the things I love about Doctor Who. It's just the crazy creative things they come up with, even if they don't make any sense. It's just, I have to applaud their creativity.
I agree. One of the things I really enjoyed about this season, I really liked Belinda. I thought Belinda and the Doctor, the interpersonal chemistry between the two of them was really good.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoyed that. And spoiler alert, people, Ncuti left Doctor Who after this season. So at the end, when he starts regenerating, I was actually quite frustrated because I thought that this season, this Doctor with this companion really got into their groove. And I was like, okay, this is good. There's a good relationship. There's a good groove here. This is really coming together, producing really high quality stories. And I was really enjoying it. And now we're going to have to start all over again.
Yeah. I feel the same. I was sad to hear that he was only going to do these 2 seasons. Yeah. What are you going to do?
Right. Oh, what did you really like? Let's look at these episodes. Was there a particular episode that stood out as a favorite for you?
Oh yeah. For me, I think The Well was probably my favorite episode of the season.
Yeah.
I really loved the callback to Moonlight, which is another episode I enjoyed. I know you don't enjoy it so much, but I enjoy it probably for the reasons that you enjoy it not as much, because it's so unusual. It's very like self-contained and claustrophobic, and it really dives into
horror.
Yeah, it really dives into the horrific.
Yeah,
in a way that some of like we've talked about before, a lot of Doctor Who is kind of a horror show, but the way they treat it is a little bit more actiony, a little bit more, it's a little bit lighter. And that episode kind of really just sunk into it, which I really liked. And they kind of did a similar thing with this episode, with The Well. So I really like that. The idea of something that's always behind someone is creepy. Kind of reminded me of the episode with Donna, where she had that thing on her back. I think that was Donna.
Yes, turn left.
Turn left, yeah. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. That was one of my favorite episodes of this season, and I really liked. Yeah, I guess I liked a lot of these episodes, but that one stood out for me, I think, the most. What about you?
That one stood out for me as well. What I don't like about Midnight is not so much the claustrophobia, because that can actually lead to some really interesting dynamics in a story. What I didn't like about it was the horror part of everyone turning on everyone. And it was very realistic. The panic of people not knowing what's going on, and how they then will do whatever they need to do in order to protect themselves and their loved ones. And that part was really ugly and very uncomfortable. And that's what I don't like. And the fact that there was nothing the Doctor could do. We've seen stories in the past where the Doctor's faced with people who are panicky and freaking out, and the Doctor helps them focus on something in order to solve the problem. But in Midnight, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's one of the reasons I liked it, because it's so out of character in that way, and because they're just trapped there. And like you said, the Doctor's out of control. Not like he's going wild, but his words don't have an effect on people like they often do. Yeah. He's not really able to convince people, for the most part, to stay calm. And it just the whole situation gets out of control. And I think that I like that aspect of it, that it's a lot more tense because of it.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I like The Well, because the Doctor doesn't lose control. He is still able to use his intellect and his skills to try to guide people to a safe resolution for the challenge.
Yeah.
To the challenge. And so I think that's why I enjoyed The Well. But I have to say, there were other stories that I really enjoyed. I liked the story and the engine because it was such an unusual... It was almost meta in the way it looked at story. It was a story about telling stories that created stories. And the solution was telling a story. I mean, it was just so layered in that way. And I think I said this to you before, that it felt, watching this episode felt like sitting around a campfire listening to a folktale. It felt almost, there was something sophisticated about it, yet incredibly grounded, and coming out of from a different perspective than we usually see a Doctor Who story. I mean, it wasn't just a usual monster of the week kind of thing. You came at it from a really oblique angle, and I thought that was really clever and very interesting.
I like that one a lot too. The idea of stories being the like power source for an engine is just an interesting idea.
Yeah.
How it linked, like the same place is linked to two different places in space at the same time. Kind of reminded me of Howl's Moving Castle, if you've ever read that book or seen the movie. Has that kind of idea. And I liked at the end of the story how the antagonist isn't killed or crushed or destroyed or defeated in that way, but is given another chance and is eager to accept that, because that's not something we get a lot.
Yeah,
I really liked how they wrapped that one up.
I agree. I really enjoyed the 2-part finale. I liked this idea of new reality that the Doctor was placed in. And one of the things that I enjoyed across the board, across all of these episodes, was how this series did not take itself too seriously. There was very much we're just having fun with this. Right now, for example, I am looking at the series on Disney Plus, and it has all the sort of imagery from each of the, a single image from each of the episodes, and the color is very bright. It's almost cartoonish in coloring. The way it looks is bright and uplifting and not somber, not like this is action adventure. No, it's about fun. And I think that's what they did across the board here. And I think those last 2 episodes really leaned into, this is fun story making. We're going to have fun here. Yeah, we're telling a story. Yeah, it's, got, world ending stakes, but we're also going to have fun with it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, this has Russell T Davies as a showrunner. And I think this was a course correction after the Jodie Whittaker run, which was darker, more serious, like everything was so different in that run. I think they wanted to spring back to like, hey, remember when Doctor Who was fun? Let's go back to that. So I think that's why they did that. And I think it worked.
I agree. I really do.
I enjoyed that shift in tone. I think the actors nailed it. I think this season and the season before, I think they worked pretty well together. And I was hoping to see more. I'm hoping that Russell Davies will continue being the showrunner for at least another season, because he set things up in this season that hopefully will be paid off. If he's running it in 1 or 2 seasons to come. So yeah, I hope that continues, because I enjoyed that as well. I also liked the Wish World episode where it's based on Conrad's wish at the rotting, I guess, of the Rani, which I don't know who that character is. I'm guessing it's like pre-reboot of the show.
Yeah, it's a 70s character.
Yeah, I've seen some of the 60s and 70s episodes, but not all of them. So I don't remember. I don't remember this character at all. But I like the way that they set it up. I really like that episode where, it's like an alternate reality. You're wondering what's going on, and then it sets up to the final episode, the Reality War, which I didn't like as much as you did, apparently. But we'll talk about that.
Well, shall we talk about that? Is there anything that you would have changed as a writer in any of these episodes? Cue Reality War.
Yeah, for me, that's the biggest thing. I felt like the season fell kind of flat for me at the end. Kind of like the last season did. Like in the last episode, I felt like there was this cool build up, and then the wrap up wasn't particularly satisfying for me. I think one of the main things is in the reality war, which is the last episode, there were just parts that were confusing. Like there's this long discussion they're having in unit with the doctors there and Ruby's there and the Ronnie's there and Belinda's there with their child. And like I get her goal of wanting to, I don't know, bring back or do something with this Omega, right? The original Time Lord, or the one that created the Time Lords. That part I get, but I didn't understand why they were discussing the child. Like the whole aspect of the child being there felt like it was just forced into the episode to try to make us care. Like, oh look, here's this kid. Everyone cares about kids. But it didn't seem like it fit naturally into what was going on. It's like, oh, maybe we can use the child, but no, you can't use the child. Okay, so why did even that brought up? It didn't make any sense to me. It felt like this subplot or this piece that they were trying to connect in that didn't really work and wasn't necessary for what was happening. Because they ended up going and bringing back the Omega, and it was this totally different thing, and it eats her, and it's like all that played out anyway. And then they came back and it's like, oh, we were trying to save the girl by having her in this zero box or whatever it was. And then they did and they didn't. There's just a lot going on there that didn't seem like it mattered. And then I think that threw off the whole messaging, like, and the whole morality. It was iffy morality to me, right? If you don't have the child, I think it works fine. Throwing the child in there and having him rework the whole universe to bring back this child who we don't know who that kid is. We don't really have an attachment to her. She didn't even exist 2 episodes ago. So why is like the whole finale of this season coming around to this? And then they reworked the universe to bring back this child that didn't even exist. It was just fabricated from a wish. Who knows how many people were put out of existence who should have been there because you reworked this universe to bring this child back. It felt morally not the right thing to do. So yeah, I wasn't too happy with that final episode because of that. And I think if you had removed her, it would have been a fine episode.
I didn't have a problem with that. And I didn't see the moral weirdness of it because, and maybe I took it too literally, but when the Ronnie was telling the doctor that she was going to make this world go away, and he was on like the balcony that then collapsed, and he's shouting, "No, you can't. She's real." So I guess I took that literally, that this child actually existed, and she was more than just a function of the wish. Now, you're right. In thinking about it, I don't see that. I don't recall that was really explained how that happened. But the other thing I actually didn't mind about it, and the way I liked it, is because Ruby remembered her. Ruby remembered how important she was, and they believed Ruby. And I kind of really appreciated that. She was the only one who had any memory of this. And yet the doctor and all the unit people respected her and trusted her enough to say, okay, things are not right. We still have to fix it. So I kind of really liked that, the fact that this trust was built into the story. You think you might have just taken the child out and just sort of had her be a surprise at the end when you learn that she was actually Belinda's daughter?
Yeah, maybe something like that. I do agree with you. I do like that they trusted Ruby, but clearly that was, the doctor's and Belinda's child, which obviously didn't exist prior to that Wish episode. So that being real doesn't really make sense. The child was like, what, 3 years old or something at that point already, and they'd only just met. So the things didn't line up. I don't know. The whole last episode left me wondering, like, we're talking theme-wise, right? What was the point of this season? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think there are some clear themes in individual episodes, but I was trying to think of something for the whole season. I couldn't come up with anything. What were they trying to do with Belinda? I mean, she ends up with a child at the end of the season that wasn't hers at the beginning, and why? Like, it didn't seem like she was particularly pining to have a child. That wasn't mentioned during the season. It's like,
oh, interesting, because I got the feeling that the child was there the whole time, and it's just that we, the viewer, were never shown the conversations that she had with the doctor about needing to get back on this particular day at this particular time to get back to her child. Now, that, in a way, is a little bit of
that at the end.
A little bit of a cheat.
It felt like they were trying to shoehorn that in at the end.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a cheat, but I guess, and maybe because at that point in the story when I was watching it and I was realizing they're going to make the doctor regenerate what? Then I was like processing that. So I was maybe not paying as close attention to the kid thing. I understand the frustration you have with that. Yeah. I guess it was a way of putting Belinda back at home and giving her reason to stay rather than continue journeying with the doctor. Because it's entirely possible for the next season they're going to get a new companion. So maybe that was the purpose of that. But then you're right, from a storytelling perspective, that's letting cast changes drive the story, which of course happens all the time. But
yeah. I mean, you have to do that to some extent. That decision wasn't made until later in the season.
Yeah.
Maybe Gatwa hadn't decided yet, because they were kind of waiting, I think, to see if Disney was going to continue funding them for the next season, and Disney hadn't committed. And my understanding, well, I don't know, just something I read online, is that Gatwa basically is like, I'm not going to wait around indefinitely. I've got to work. So that's why he ultimately bowed out. So maybe that's what happened at the end. They tried to make it connect more. It seemed like they were trying. It was one of those things where it's like, now we're going to try to explain everything to you at the end, rather than having it sort of be revealed as you go.
Yeah.
Because it didn't make sense. It's like, oh, she had a kid, but then she had a kid with some other guy. But then now it was like hers and the doctor's kid. Like, I don't know, there's a lot going on there that muddled the whole ending for me.
Yeah. I did not care for the Interstellar Song Contest. And the reason for that is that I felt like the story was more focused on the idea. Oh, look, it's like, Eurovision. Rather than the story.
Yeah.
That one kind of bothered me a little bit because the story wasn't as cohesive, because it seemed like it was a little bit more enamored with the idea than the story itself. And then in Lucky Day, when we first meet Conrad's cruelty seems to be a little bit over the top. I mean, it's like really, I don't know, it seems so much more huge than it needed to be. His cruelty to Ruby, I mean, he was so unbelievably cruel to her. So much more than it needed to be, and for whatever was bothering him. So that sort of seemed out of proportion. That's the word I'm looking for. It was out of proportion. So those were the two things that kind of bothered me a little bit.
That's a good point. The way it was played was almost like he had something out specifically for her. He was trying to get revenge on her or something, and it's like that.
For what reason?
Right. It's like, why? Yeah, why was he so cruel to her? Yeah, that's a good point. Regarding the Interstellar Song Contest, one of the things I liked about that was the way they showed like this bigotry against a particular group of aliens. That reminded me of like some Star Trek episodes where they do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of other Doctor Who episodes, to be fair, where you use science fiction to reflect what happens in our society and show it through a different lens. I like that kind of thing.
And I do too. It just it seemed very, I don't know. It wasn't an organic storytelling process. It was we have this thing that we're going to use that's like really popular and we love this idea. And we have this point we're going to make that we think is really important and it wasn't very organically done. It did not feel natural. I agree. I think the point of the story and using science fiction in that way was important, but how it was done felt very clunky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I can kind of agree with that. And they're still doing the whole Mavity thing. I'm wondering if that's going to have a point or like play out at some point, or if it's just some kind of inside joke kind of thing. It seems like an odd thing to continue.
Joke. Yeah.
And they also, in that episode, I think, reintroduced the doctor's granddaughter concept, right? Which is like way back, maybe the first episode even. It's like, from my understanding. So they obviously have a plan for that, I guess. So that was one of the things, like, I'm curious to see where that goes in a future season.
I agree. So let's talk themes. I did actually pull a theme from all of the episodes.
Okay, yeah.
And it was something that I think Doctor Who had been missing for a very long time. And that was joy in existence. Because that's what I constantly felt from the Doctor as he was moving through his adventures. Even when they were scary, even when they were frustrating, he still was taking joy in existence.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, they almost explicitly say that. I got that message at the end of like, that was the character and the people who worked on this basically giving that message of like, hey, it was fun to be back in Doctor Who again. Well, you're right. That is something that kind of carried through from the beginning of his season, beginning of his episodes. When we first see him, he's like smiling and happy to be there, and it's like, oh, okay, this is cool. Yeah, when he's first bi-generated, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, that's a good one.
How about you? I mean, you said you struggled a little bit with theme across episodes. How about individual episodes? Did you pull out?
Yeah, I was trying to come up with like a message for like, what's the message for this group of stories? What are they trying to tell us about life? And it's always hard to do in a show like this because each episode is so different and they have their own concepts. Yeah, I was trying to think of, usually in like in the last 2 episodes here, right? They're connected, and usually that's kind of where I try to find what the story's theme is as the season wraps up, or as the show wraps up, or as the episode wraps up. And that's I was having a hard time with the wish and the reality world. It's got to be something with wishes. You don't want to say be careful what you wish for. It wasn't quite that simple or that common, but there was something there, I think, with trying to do the right thing or something. Because even at the end, when Ruby has the wish power, she wishes for Conrad to be happy, right? And she could have obviously been cruel back to him, or implemented some kind of justice or something like that, but that's not what she did. So I think maybe something there's the theme is like, let's
compassion.
Let's not dive into the darkness, kind of goes with the joy, but let's try for happiness. So maybe it ties into your joy theme.
I just realized, why didn't the doctor send the baby home to his family? He could have wished for that.
Yeah.
Or he could have taken his TARDIS back, fixed what the Ronnie did. Anyway, just a thought. As a writer, what do you take away from this season of Doctor Who?
2 things for me. I think one, I'm left with a feeling of wanting clarity at the end, in the final episode in particular. That's something I would want. But more importantly than that, my takeaway is, and this kind of goes for the Doctor Who series as a whole, but in particular this season, is just creativity. Playing with different concepts. There's so many unique ideas in this show, and I think we saw that reflected in this season. That's something that I really appreciate. So that's my takeaway.
I took away the idea of just having fun. That was my takeaway. It's just to have fun. The storytelling was about having fun and enjoying stories, creating stories. Have fun.
Yeah, that's a great one. Perfect.
Thank you for joining us as we talked about the story told in season 2 of the 15th series of Doctor Who. A big thank you to our Patreon supporters and all our subscribers. We're so grateful for your support and your encouragement. The Stories Told podcast is available on multiple podcast platforms, and we thank you for liking and subscribing or following, depending on where you're listening. It may not be a big deal to you, but it means a lot to us. If you have a favorite book, movie, or TV series you'd like to suggest for the podcast, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, and that link is in the show notes. You can find Michael Grayford at michaelgrayford.com and E.W. Barnes at 1000years.com, and those links are also in the show notes. Join us next time as we talk about the story told in the Apple movie Fountain of Youth. Thanks so much, Mike. This was a lot of fun.
Yep, I enjoyed it.
And we'll see you next time on the Stories Told podcast.